Mm-hmm.
We've got New England apple products, my brothers and my company,
Mm-hmm.
squeezing them.
Right.
And then we've got Stormalong cider, fermenting and packaging the hard cider.
Right. So who is it? Does the product belong to all three of you guys then?
We're actually in it together.
Yeah.
We formed a separate company
Okay, neat.
called Carlson Orchards Hard Cider LLC. Pretty creative.
Yeah.
And based, registered here in Leominster.
Yeah.
And we're all a part of that.
That's cool. So, I mean, what was the kind of genesis of this idea? Like, who came up with it first, and then how did it go from there?
Yeah, I believe for a long time that ideas sort of evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Good ones do.
Yeah.
But we were approached, my brother and I were approached by Shannon Edgar from Stormalong Cider,
Yeah.
who had started his cider business in Sherburne,
Mm-hmm.
in a beautiful restored barn on his property that, classic New England startup, right?
Yeah.
And he was scaling his business up and needed more space,
Mm-hmm.
and was interested in getting connected to the source of the raw cider, basically to take a logistics
Mm-hmm.
step out of the process, and more importantly, to have a relationship that would allow him better control over the fruit that was used and the blends and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Shannon approached us, 3 years ago,
Right. Yeah.
probably, and
Mhm.
said, you guys have some space. And we had, I'll take you out to see it, we had an indoor railroad bed,
Mm-hmm.
half of which was still there. The other half has been used up. But we had a half a railroad bed and a corner of the building that was covered with used equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it was the junkyard, right?
Yeah.
The scrapyard. So, so we cleaned up the junkyard, and Shannon needed the extra 3 feet of ceiling height for his tanks, so we leased him that 2,200 plus or minus square feet.
Mm-hmm.
He put a big old concrete floor with drains in it over the old railroad bed,
Mhm.
and then built a wall around his production space and,
Yeah.
and got started. And somewhere in that process, we started kicking around the idea of, because Stormalong's ciders have they have a pretty distinct positioning in the marketplace.
Mhm.
They're, for lack of a better phrase, artisanal.
Yeah.
He's pretty dedicated and crafty about what he makes.
Mm-hmm.
And we, the idea of using and involving Carlson Orchards brand in a hard cider, with the connection to the farm and, locally grown. And Carlson's is a brand that's fairly well known in southern New England because they've been selling the sweet cider here a lot longer than I've been making it for them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the conversation that evolved.
Where it started.
The Carlsons had an interest in, the hard cider thing's been kind of hot for a few years, Even though the volumes plateaued the last couple of years, what's happening is that the big brands, led by Angry Orchard, are declining,
Mm-hmm.
and the local, smaller, craftier brands
Yeah.
are growing.
Well, it's kind of going the same route of beer. It's just
Craft beer went through a very similar cycle, sort of after its initial growth spike.
Yeah.
So it spiked, plateaued a little bit. There was some shakeout, and now it's that
Right.
continues to rock. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So cider in the U.S. was a big deal back before Prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
Hard cider was a pretty substantial share of the total
Yeah.
low alcohol category. But it never came back after Prohibition was repealed. Beer did
Yeah.
it with a vengeance, but hard cider just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, they got Shannon because we were here for when
his
that
ribbon
first
cutting?
happened, and he said there was some kind of reason for that. I think it was a lot of the trees in Prohibition that were being used to make the apples for cider that were really good for those ciders were cut down.
I
Or
hadn't heard
something
that,
like
but
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense because
Yeah.
there are, in England and France, hard ciders continue to be a pretty strong part of the landscape, right?
Yeah.
And they grow very distinct apples from the ones that you and I are used to eating.
Right. Yeah. It's like baking apples or just the apples that you eat. They're just different kinds.
Exactly, very
Yeah.
different varieties.
So is this kind of cool for you guys, just given that you were doing one thing for so long and now you're, I don't want to make a pun, but branching out into these new things?
You did make a pun.
I did.
Well, that's interesting. I'll just be really straight with you. We have been watching. We moved the cider business, the sweet cider business, over here in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So hard cider was just starting to emerge even back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting questioned regularly. Okay, how about hard cider? When are you going to do hard cider? And frankly, I was scared of the alcoholic beverage category only from the standpoint of a totally different regulatory set. Totally, it's completely foreign to me. I mean, I'd like to think I'm bright enough so I might have been able to figure it out. But, from that standpoint, taxation, regulation, legal, blah, 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 very different. And distribution is very different. I knew a little bit more about distribution because, frankly, beer distributors over the years have taken on non-alcoholic products over time. Not so much the sweet cider stuff that we make because that's short shelf, but it's a different business.
Yeah.
And when Shannon came into the picture, he had figured all the regulatory stuff out, and the legal stuff out, and the licensing stuff out, and had, for Stormalong, had already been through a selection process with Massachusetts distributors, and had started in other states as well. So long-winded answer to your question, yes, we've sensed that there's a real opportunity in this space for quite some time. We had a lot of folks asking for it, but we've been watching the growth of it for a while, and by being able to work with Shannon, we plugged the knowledge void that we had here. And oh, by the way, the Carlsons, similarly are looking for ways to, expand the brand,
right.
Add value to the farm. It's hard to grow stuff and stay alive, financially
you need
anymore.
to be diverse.
Yeah. So their interest was in, let's continue to, we've got a terrific property, we've got a great brand here, let's leverage it. So, long story short, it all came together.
Got it. So when actually is brewing the right word? Is that word just for beer?
Typically the word that gets used is fermenting.
Fermenting. So when did we start fermenting this kind of cider here?
Well, we sort of pre-introduced Carlson hard cider, the Oak Hill blend product that's in the market now. We pre-introduced that at the farm last September.
Okay.
So the initial batch probably went into tanks, for fermenting sometime last summer.
Okay.
From apples out of storage from the prior year. I don't remember the first. I should remember the first production date was right after Labor Day.
Okay.
And for the farm, their opportunity for retail sales of the hard cider and sampling the new hard cider is during harvest, right?
Right.
I mean, if we had gotten together a little bit quicker, we could have started sampling and selling hard cider when pick your own peaches started happening in July.
Right.
But after Labor Day, the pick your own apples thing, the traffic flow on the farm really accelerates. It
so it's more of like a fall drink almost. You think?
Yeah.
Well, it could be year round, but when you're apple picking, it makes sense.
That part makes sense.
Yeah.
Hard cider has more summer seasonality to it because it's a subset of the beer category, right? It has more of a summer season, but yeah, fall is when you're on a farm introducing a farm brand hard cider. It makes obvious sense.
Yeah.
That's when you want to launch. So, and we were pretty happy with the product that we come up. The style of cider, we knew we didn't want to play on the very dry end, and we at the same time didn't want to be as sweet as Angry Orchard or Downey. Right. Sort of the leading brands around here. We heard enough from consumers that that stuff's a little bit too sweet.
Yeah.
So we aimed for a semi-sweet.
Yeah.
And we're all pleasantly, I don't want to say shocked, but certainly pleasantly surprised at the consumer reaction we got. People just walked into the tent and showed Franklin Carlson their ID and got a cup of cider and tasted it, and the reaction was just almost universally really good. So like, ooh. Hey.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, it's working.
It's like, we just hit a home run at our first major league at bat here, right?
That's a good
and then we had to sort through which way do we want to go with distribution of this and that sort of thing. So we put that all together. We made a decision prior to launching to distribution to increase the size of the cans from the 12-ounce cans that the Carlsons are selling last fall to a 16-ounce because that just seems to be where the category is headed.
Where can you buy it?
It's just getting into distribution now. Somebody at Taste of Leominster the other night told me they'd already bought it at Wyman's downtown.
Okay.
I popped into the store just down the street here last week and it hadn't shown up yet. I was coming home from Connecticut a couple of weeks ago and popped into Yankee Liquors and Yankee something or other in Sturbridge right there off of 84. And they had it. It had just shown up. There was no shelf tag. There were 6 4-packs still there, so I'm guessing it had just gotten cut on the shelf. And we have in the beer distribution space, there is a data sharing and software platform that will give us visibility of literally where every case and every keg got shipped. That's cool. Just started to come online now. So it's available in a whole bunch of places, but we don't have all that data live yet. So.
The way you're describing it now, though, like being in places and seeing it, it sounds almost like one of those stories when you're in a band and you hear your song come on the radio for the first time. It's like you're just in random stores and seeing your stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty cool.
Well, it's funny. Shannon and I were coming back from Connecticut sometime this fall or winter, and we stopped at that store. It's a pretty popular spot, and along the back wall is at least 60 feet of 6 shelves high craft beer and cider. And he was trying to make the point, which he did, that this is very different than sweet cider. We're up against scores of other brands coming from near and far. It's a different marketing game. And what really pleased me when I went back into that environment and saw the Oak Hill blend on the shelf is, the graphics look right. That it's only one SKU, it's only one facing, but I'm biased, but you could find it on the shelf.
Yeah, it was there.
It was there, and it was fairly visible. So
with all the other guys.
Oh my,
but
yeah,
you're
stores,
in it. Yeah.
That's cool. Stores like that and places like Total Wine just have broad variety. Your quote unquote typical local liquor store probably doesn't carry quite as many brands, but.
Yeah.
Long story short, we're getting there.
Yeah, but that must be pretty validating. Like you see all these like established guys, these big names, but you have the same real estate on the shelves as them in these stores.
We'll get there.
That's cool.
We'll get there.
All right. Well, I'm out of questions. I think. Do you think we could take a look back?
Let's go take it. Yeah, I'm happy to take a walk around.
Right behind this building is that in the early '70s, a company called Carpenter that makes the foam rubber that's in car seats and some mattresses. They make foam rubber sheet. It was established in Gardner. They built this building in the early '70s, and Carpenter is now a multinational company. They're making foam rubber all over the world. They moved their headquarters at some point to Richmond, Virginia, but they had this building, and they were, as far as I know, they were rolling boxcars. And we'll see that space in a minute. They were rolling boxcars in the back corner, bringing these massive sheets of different grades of foam rubber in, and then just cutting and fitting it and packaging it for the end use, right? They must have gotten done sometime in the mid-2000s. I'm not sure exactly when they finally emptied out.